Got it.
And record in cloud, right?
It's recording in cloud, not on my computer.
Cool.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Shu Chen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Indu.
Hello.
Good morning.
Oh, Suzanne, I like the, where is that, Europe?
That is the Marais in Paris.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
Hey, Victor.
Morning.
Morning. So we are up at 13, 14. Dismiss all. We'll wait just another minute or so. Pretty flowers, Shu Chen, and trees in the background.
That's camellia, actually.
I'm obviously not a botanist. It's beautiful. It's perfectly, it's like a halo around your head.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Malfin. I'm really enjoying these green screens.
Yeah, it works well in my travel writing class. We all put up different backgrounds.
Oh, that's nice.
Brow high.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello.
Dorte, you're admitting these people in the waiting room, right? Okay, because I would have missed it all. I got it. Oh, so I guess most of the people who registered have showed up. Hi, Catherine. MP8YK. Is that Esther? Esther?
Yes, it's me.
Okay. And Catherine.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi.
Yesterday we were having trouble with bandwidth, so everybody had their videos turned off, but I can turn mine back on.
Well, you can turn them off if you want, if it's easier. As long as everyone's name is up there, which it is. Hey, Rose, welcome. All right, I think we can get started. I think there are 20 people that were registered and 18 have showed up, so that's pretty good showing. Welcome, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Andy Kaufman. I'm currently at the Center for Teaching Excellence. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Engaged Learning Initiatives. That's a position I just started a few months ago. And before that, for many years, I still am the teacher of the Books Behind Bars course at UVA. And so, like all of you, I've had very personal experience with the challenges of what we're all going through. And Ellen Blackman and Bonnie Gordon are actually, we kind of came up with this idea together, figuring that there are many resources available to faculty dealing with this transition, but there haven't really been any specifically focused on the group, those of us who are, the unique challenges of community engaged teaching. Does everybody know Bonnie? Bonnie, you want to quickly introduce yourself? Let people know who you are.
Sure. I'm Bonnie Gordon. I teach in the music department and I run the community engagement curriculum for the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm a faculty director of the Equity Center.
And Ellen?
Hello, everyone. I am Ellen Blackman. I work in the Office for Academic Outreach, work very closely with Bonnie actually on that civic and community engagement program in the college. And then in the Office for Academic Outreach, have encountered a lot of you sort of working on the fringes of community engaged pedagogy here at UVA.
So
Yeah, and
Ellen, it's hard to hear you, so you might check your settings.
And Rose, would you introduce yourself, because Rose is also going to be an important resource for those of you who haven't already taken advantage of it.
Hi, I'm Rose Cole. I am the Director of Community Engagement at Madison House. And before I started there, I was working in student affairs and have worked with Bonnie since I was a PhD student. and we have a few initiatives helping faculty who are interested in service learning place students with our community partners for volunteer placements for their courses. And my research is also on kind of thinking about community-based pedagogies. And yeah, and we're figuring out this service placement stuff is not quite working this semester, as we all know. So
Yeah. Thanks, Rose.
Rose, just you know, you're also pretty hard to hear.
Can people hear me all right? Yeah, okay, great. So among all the challenges that all of us, all the faculty are facing, you know, those of us who are teaching community engaged courses have an additional unique set of challenges. And I've talked to a number of faculty, as I know Bonnie and Ellen and Rose have. And some of the issues that are coming up are, you know, well, one of the first issues is what do we communicate with our community partners? And Bonnie and Ellen and Rose put together a great resource which addresses that, among other things. And we'll share with you that resource and other resources. But that's one of the issues. So what are we communicating? How are we communicating with our community partners? What do we do about student volunteers? And you know, since volunteering is presumably an important part of a community engaged course, what do we do about students, and what do we do about the relationships that are often so important between the students and their community partners? And what should the role of the community partner be in this transition? So how can we work with them to co-create this new version of our course, whatever that is? And should we ask them to be involved in this? How much should we, you know, all of them are facing enormous burdens and challenges just like the rest of us. So what role should we should we be asking them to play as we rethink our courses? And related to that, do we have a new set of responsibilities now to our community partners, all of whom are facing, you know, severe challenges? Maybe the role that we can play for them and the kind of assistance that we can offer them is a little bit different now than we had originally envisioned in our courses. You know, and then the other issue that comes up is, for many courses, we have to reimagine the very course and reimagine either our course objectives in midstream or find creative new ways to achieve our existing course objectives. And I think that applies to many courses. That's not unique to community engaged teaching, but I think it has kind of unique dimensions with community engaged courses. And then, you know, another question that comes up, so what role can students now play in this process of recreating or co-creating this new version of our course with us? And so the purpose of, so these are just some of the issues that faculty have been raising in recent weeks. And the purpose of this session today is to give us all an opportunity to really have a discussion about these issues in a very practical, concrete way. And I'm sharing with you, you know, the three big questions that I hope we'll have an opportunity to discuss are listed here on my screen share. And so because of the relatively large number of people, what I think the easiest way to do this will be to have to kind of have some breakout sessions where we can have smaller, more focused discussions and then kind of debrief as a group. Before we delve into the first breakout session, I just want to share with you my own experience, just, you know, very real-time experience with Books Behind Bars, and I think this may resonate with some of you. It may bring up issues that are, I think, universal to all of us. You know, so one of the things that happened when we all had to move online is that the very core of my course, which was the relationships between the students, the UVA students and the Correctional Center students, was essentially brought to an abrupt halt. And one of the reasons for that is because the Department of Juvenile Justice doesn't allow technology in their facility. So I did manage to get the director of Virginia's Department of Juvenile Justice to make an exception to that. But then there was another problem that arose. So even if they could get technology to the Correctional Center students, and even if we could have synchronous meetings between the UVA students and the Correctional Center students, they don't have the staff to support that. So for all intents and purposes, the real-time relationships between both groups of students are done. And that was a huge blow to the entire course. It was, you know, my students, the UVA students are heartbroken, the Correctional Center students are upset. And so I was faced with a really difficult challenge of what is this course about now? What are we going to do? And I think many of you can probably relate to that. Well, what I did is on the first day that we all came back together, I brainstormed with my students, and it had to be just the UVA students because we didn't have access to the Correctional Center students. I asked them a very basic question. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's forget about what we've done, the assignments we've accomplished, et cetera, et cetera. Let's ask ourselves, what is this course truly about at the deepest, most fundamental level? What is the essential DNA of our course? And how can we recreate that under these new circumstances? And what we came up with was a very interesting sentence that we could all buy into. And the sentence was that this class is about connection, community, and deep conversation inspired by great works of Russian literature. This class at its core is about connection, community, and deep conversation inspired by works of Russian literature. And none of us had ever quite framed the class in those terms, but it was a very helpful starting point. And then the next question was, so how do we, I tasked the students to join me in creatively coming up with a way that we can recreate that DNA of our course under these new circumstances. How can we recreate that sense of connection, community, and even deep conversation when the Correctional Center students aren't even there with us physically? So you can imagine, it took a lot of creativity on students' parts, a lot of frustration, a lot of digging deep, and we still don't have excellent answers, but I'll just share with you a couple of the solutions that we did come up with, the tentative solutions. And one of them was students, came up with this together, the idea of creating, just like we're having a meeting right now that's being recorded, the students had the idea of why couldn't they record themselves, and students work in pairs, so there's each pair of UVA students works with a group of Correctional Center students. Why couldn't each pair record themselves having a discussion and a conversation, and then we share this, asynchronously with the Correctional Center students? And how do we make it so it's not a performance, but a conversation? How do you use this technology that we're all experiencing right now, where the people viewing it don't have the perception that they're being lectured to or that it's didactic, which is very much outside of the very principle of the course? How do we bring them into the conversation using this technology even when they're not physically present? And some of the things the students came up with were things as simple as just being authentic. Maybe having some notes in front of you, but definitely not reading a script. Bringing a lot of humor into it, saying to the guys that they work with, and it's all males that they work with, we're thinking of you guys. We miss you. We don't know what we're doing with this technology, but we're doing the best we can, and just being very transparent about what's going on. And then even asking them questions, hey guys, we were thinking, here's some questions about this week's reading that really intrigued us, and we wonder what you guys thought about that. Or sharing pictures or online videos or even their own creative work. Or even having a conversation and a debate among themselves, which is sometimes very interesting to watch people, especially people hashing it out over an issue. And then that's also a way to draw the audience in. So our attempt was to how to use this technology to recreate that sense of connection, community, and even conversation when the other participants in the conversation aren't there. And another solution that some students preferred was writing letters to achieve those same goals. And the one thing that we all came upon as a really useful way of thinking about this is making direct, explicit connections between the themes of Russian literature and our current situation. So Russian literature is never been just a subject, the subject is always connected with the experience of this class, but now it has new resonances. And in fact, many of the themes of Russian literature are very connected with what we're going on, with what's going on right now. The idea of national unity in a time of collective trauma, or this emphasis on Russian emphasis on fierce idealism amid harsh social realities, or the power of writing and creativity to transcend social and physical divides. And for instance, we read a poem, an actual letter last week that was written by a woman whose husband was, Nadezhda Mandelstam was her name, and her husband, Osip Mandelstam, was taken away to a Siberian labor camp and never to be seen again. And she wrote him a letter which she never intended to send to him, but she wrote it for herself and as a way to honor his memory. And so, so using that letter, really bringing up many issues similar to what's going on right now. And there are obviously differences, but this idea of using your discipline to really address the issues before us and make it very, very relevant to the current situation, one thing that we find useful. So that's all I want to just kind of to prime your pumps a little bit about what I've been facing, what some of the solutions that we've come up with. But now I think what I'd like to do, I'd like to break us into breakout rooms. And I'd like in each breakout room, Ellen and Bonnie and I will each be in one of the rooms as facilitators. And I'd like the first breakout room, I'd like us to focus on going back to this screen. Let's first, what have been your successes thus far? But what are some solutions that you've come up with that have worked that you can share with others? And what have you found most challenging? Okay, are those instructions clear? Everyone, so for our first breakout room?
Yes,
okay,
they are clear.
Okay, thank you. And now
I'm
I
not
get
sure I understand.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, that was just my Siri talking.
Oh, Siri is on top of it. I thought she was making a joke. Okay. So we've got 3 breakout rooms. Hey, Dorte. Glad you're still with us.
So we just got an invitation, each of us, and do you want us to join? Have you moved participants around enough?
No, I haven't. I mean, let me see. So everyone is unassigned, and I have breakout room and breakout room 2. Don't people automatically get assigned?
I don't know. Did other people, can you just show your thumb, get assigned to a breakout room?
I don't seem to be assigned to one yet.
Okay, so
I haven't.
I haven't.
you want to
either.
make me a host, Andy, and I can do this from here?
Thank you for
What is it?
thank you for not for staying around, Dorte. I need to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
Is somebody beeping?
Yeah, somebody is beeping. Okay, Andy, if your name, funny enough, doesn't show up, but I will fix that in a moment. Oh, no, you're in a room. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna add Jen here and Victor here. Okay, so I'm gonna open all rooms and I'll call you back when, how many minutes, Andy? Are you muted? Sorry.
8 minutes for
8
this
minutes.
one.
Okay, cool. And it's just, you know, I listened into one room and the first person wasn't even done speaking when I left.
Wasn't
Sorry,
what? She wasn't what? The first person wasn't doing.
The first person wasn't finished when I left the minute. So everybody will be kicked in after a few more seconds, 15
Okay.
more seconds. But
Okay.
just know that, you know, at least in one, only one person had a chance to speak.
Really? How is that? How did that happen?
I'll tell you later.
Whose room was that? I mean, who was the facilitator?
It's all good. Just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay. No, but I just want to know for. All right. Welcome back, everyone.
All
sorry. I'll have to admit, I was not good at managing my time with that group, so we may
No.
have some things to unravel still.
Do you want to? Is there anything you want to share, or maybe?
Well, it sounded like I don't know if I can put Kate and Rose back on the spot, but we were trying to get unpack the conversation around virtual volunteering a little more, and what you've seen out in the wild, so to speak, and what may be practical.
Were there any insights or specific challenges that came up?
Well, reporting out from our group, we went around, and I think one of the biggest things that was coming through from our participants was, or at least it sat with me, what was most impactful is this rupture that's coming to these relationships that these students have formed with community partners. And we've heard about the sadness that fourth years are experiencing because commencement is no more. But now there are hundreds of relationships around the community that have had to come to an abrupt close. That's something that, yeah, like I said, was kind of sat with me, and that seemed to be voiced around the group.
Does that resonate with pretty much everyone here, that this issue of relationships and the abrupt cessation of relationships has been a big issue for you? Yeah, how many people has that been one of your biggest challenges? I don't know, just can you raise your hands? I'm just curious. Or yes, but yeah, type yes, yeah. Were there any solutions that or any successful ways of at least addressing that issue or processing it that came up in your discussion, Ellen?
Well, I like to share my personal experiences. Now, to be honest with you, I'm probably one of the very few that did not mention the big challenges, because my course requires students that 3,000 level Chinese language learners at UVA to interact with first year UVA students from China. So starting from last semester, they had 1 or 2 meetings that they were required to do online, particularly during spring break. No, actually fall break, and this semester spring break, they already online. So for my students, it's easy for them to transition to online meetings. So for my course requirements that have the embedded community engagement components, we still resume and continue without difficulty at all, unless they couldn't find their native speakers managing Chinese. But so far, no students at all have reported any difficulty at all. I think that depends on who is your target community residents. And my cohort group of targeted community residents happen to be more closely affiliated with UVA. As I mentioned, they are first year students from China, undergraduate students. Yeah, but I know that probably doesn't represent the majority of target community residents that you are recruiting, you are working with. Yeah. For example, if you target the community residents are church members, hospital patients, or immigrants, then it's probably not as easy as in my case to transition to online meetings.
But I think one of the things that's really coming out of this conversation and these challenges is the importance of relationships in community engaged classes. That's a very, for many classes, that's a fundamental component of the learning that takes place on both sides. And so, and I think that's even more important with community engaged courses, or more fundamental to the center of the core of the course than it necessarily is in more traditional courses. And so I think that's one of the unique challenges that we need to think about how to address the relationship issue. And it's a very human dimension that we often don't feel like we are necessarily equipped to deal with because we're not trained therapists, and there's a lot of loss and mourning that goes into this. But it is something we need to be aware of, and I think talk explicitly with students about and give them a platform to talk about. Ellen, was there anything else? Were those?
Well, there's one thing that I wanted to add, and I'm going to drop this in the chat. We're all flooding in resources right now, but I just dropped in something from, I think, University of Indiana University. And that's, Kate, I'm thinking about your class in particular and something like this, and maybe yours too, Esther. And that is that when those person-to-person relationships are broken apart right now, and there doesn't seem to be that online component that bridges it, I wonder, and this takes development, but if advocacy of some form that can take place remotely could help to sort of address those issues that your classes are getting at. So whether it's food insecurity or it's immigrant rights locally, if there's any way that the students could, you know, from their homes, be present in that community still. So I'm dropped in a little link there where I got the idea from, so you can explore it a little more. I found that page has been useful for inspiration. It's not terribly deep, but it gives good ideas. Happy to hear anyone else talk on that too.
I mean, I think this question of virtual volunteering is really tricky because there's a kind of cease and desist order. In part, the community partners are struggling with so many basic needs that in some fundamental way our students can't help. But I would be curious to know, for those of you with really active relationships, if any of your community partners have reached out to you and asked for some kind of, you know, like virtual continuing of the relationship.
Esther, did you have your hand up?
I just want to share that this is all very sudden, and it takes a lot of effort for people to organize so that they can ask for help. First, they need to they need to identify. They need to identify the help is not something that happens immediately, and it might be that the help is defined when we're reaching the end of the semester.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're dealing with something real, and real has a complete different rhythm and dimension. I just want to share that, you know, there is a lot of activity, and there is a lot of effort, multiple efforts in the Charlottesville community that a lot of us can tap into or become involved with. And when things start maybe having a more clear shape, that could be an opportunity for inviting a student to do volunteering remotely. There is a mutual aid group that you can subscribe to and be part of. Facebook. It's super active. It talks about all kinds of issues, legal, food security, health. There are people translating things in Spanish. It's kind of chaotic right now, but there is a lot going on. I have joined an effort with local Latino organizations to collect all of that information and attempt to translate it into Spanish and put it into a place called Slack or Slacker. That was Slack for me. So we're just dumping all the information that we get there, and hopefully community agents like Sin Barreras will come in and just take whatever they need and put it in their social media. That's something that is happening right now. I have taken the role of gathering information about food security, Kate. So if you want to hear more about that, and actually, when you put a call out there in all these groups, people start flooding you with resources. The issue right now is making sense of all those resources, repeats, organizing that information so that you can get somebody to remotely help, because they can help remotely. They can help in the case of languages translating, but there is also grants in the community that people with low resources can apply for that are have been collected from donations. And they need people to help people fill out the forms, because even in Spanish or in English, some people have needs to be helped. So there is all of those opportunities for ourselves, for our students. It's just that everything is happening very fast and very chaotically. And I'm not sure if I can ask my students to join something that is very chaotic and that I cannot have, control of, or that I cannot provide them with like a structure. And maybe that structure is going to happen when we're hitting the end of the semester. But if anybody wants to hear more about ways of being connected as community members and as teachers of these type of courses, please reach out to me because I'll be happy to share.
Or throw anything in chat that you have links to right now, if you want to put.
There is a lot of links, but I'll try.
One of the things that I've been intrigued by the language teachers, and Anne mentioned this as well, she teaches Swahili, is how basically the language skills are just being applied to different tasks now, translating documents for hospitals or people, the IRC refugees seeking citizenship. So that's been a very creative way that people in the languages have basically just shifted the activities of their class to real world needs of community partners while still achieving the learning objectives of their courses. And I'm wondering, in other disciplines, actually Brian mentioned this too. Williams is in the Batten School, and one of his classes is on equity, social justice, and social policy. And what was really intriguing about what Brian said was that, these students in the Batten School are learning about leadership, and public policy is about not managing your environment, not controlling it. And so his class has just become an experiential learning class in the real world challenges of leadership in a time of crisis. And so that was also a really creative way to rethink what he's doing in his class to achieve many of the original learning objectives while addressing the current moment. And so I really am impressed with some of the creative pivots that I'm seeing people make and thinking differently about what they're doing in their classes and not, trying to hold tight to some earlier notion. Bonnie, were there other insights or specific challenges that came out of your discussion?
I think they've been pretty covered. I mean, I think the challenges are pretty similar. And I think one of the things I think is probably worth everyone pivoting to is we've just gone online for summer session, during which time the state will still be on its kind of, enforced distancing, and the public schools will still be out. So for those people who are supposed to teach in a first or second summer session, it might be a good time to think intentionally about what this work might look like. As Esther was saying, it's so chaotic right now that it's pretty hard to ethically plug students in. Just because you don't know kind of where they are and where they're at, and whether community partners really can benefit from a 20-year-old who's across the country. But those summer sessions might be a really good time to think quite intentionally about what this might look like. So yeah, I think the challenges are pretty similar all around.
Catherine, you mentioned that you will be teaching a summer class, right? And that's one of the challenges that you're already starting to think about. You want to share that?
Yeah, I am a PhD candidate at the School of Nursing, and this year I'll be a single course faculty for a class that I've worked with for about 5 years going on now. But what we do is take second degree RN students and put them in community sites for their community health clinical rotation. And we were anticipating that it would move online. And so I was already starting to think and plan about how we can sort of simulate clinical experience when we won't actually be able to place our students out in the community. And we typically place the students with community partners that have had long-standing relationships with different groups around the city mostly, but also some in Richmond and other places. So yeah, that's why I'm here, is just sort of to begin thinking forward about how we can recreate or reimagine how we're going to make it meaningful, but also still have that community engagement that is so important for our class and for our nurses.
Do you have any first blush guesses, Catherine, about how you would approach that?
I'm getting a ton of ideas from you all. I mean, I think one aspect here is that as nurses, our work relates directly to the global public health crisis that's happening right now. And I had already started thinking about, you know, typically our students assess community needs and identify things that you all have mentioned, like food insecurity or obesity or high blood pressure in certain populations. And now I'm starting to wonder if the shift should be focusing on the particular needs of a specific subpopulation as it relates to COVID-19 and the current situation.
Is yours supposed to, is it the first or second session?
Our class was, the nursing school is a bit funny. Our class was supposed to start in June, early June. And then the clinicals go from mid-June to about mid-July.
Right. I mean, I just wonder, I suspect there'll be, you know, I mean, the health inequities are just going to kind of be exponential. And I suspect there will, in the next month, be some, you know, intentional efforts to think about what recovery looks like. And I wonder if you're in those conversations, if it would provide some opportunities for your students, and even for kind of, because that'll be the moment when the sort of quarantine is being lifted and when the state and the local schools will have figured out what to do about compensatory education for the kids. And I'm sure you've been seeing all the kind of mental health things around kids and adolescents and domestic violence. Like there might be some, it might be that some of the work would be less directly involved with individual engagement, but perhaps kind of resource creating and sharing and thinking about what the health needs will be in June, July. I suspect they will be massive, right? I mean, even for people for whom COVID-19 isn't the issue, the kind of comorbidities will explode.
Absolutely, yeah.
It all, you know, this conversation raises the issue that's, I think, relevant to all of us, which is our classes may no longer be about what we thought they were about. I think that's I'm sorry, what, Bunny?
Oh, I mean, I think that is precisely the problem with, you know, all of these community engagement courses or anything that was experiential is it doesn't get to be what it was about. And to my mind, that's actually the least of anybody's problems. Including the students, probably.
Well, I actually look at that as an opportunity. I don't look at that as an obstacle. I look at that as an opportunity for all of us to think really creatively, just like you were just sharing with Catherine, about what can our discipline do to address the current moment? What can I do as a teacher to help students make that connection, no matter what the discipline is. And so in some ways, this moment of crisis, as moments of crisis often are opportunities for really digging deep and getting very creative and even more clear about what it is that we're doing, what is it that we're really studying and teaching, and what is it that we're doing for our students to help make those connections. And that's where that example of how, you know, my class and I had to just step back and say, what is our class really about? It's not about Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. It's not about you know, any of the content at all. It's about something much deeper. And so, really thinking of all of us, and I want to encourage all of us to think that deeply and kind of go back to the drawing board and not be afraid to, you know, to just put everything on the table and say, okay, and what am I about as a teacher? I mean, my very concept of myself as a teacher, as a community engaged teacher, has been shifting in recent weeks. What is it that I'm really... What? I'm done.
I think I want to offer a cautionary note in this. I'm on the Women's Leadership Council for the President, and this came up yesterday, that there's been an enormous emphasis on everybody going at 250% to transition, and it's really not sustainable. And it's not, an emergency is different than the way you move through the world. And I think it's super important to remember that, you know, many faculty, particularly assistant professors, grad students, adjuncts, are going to be actually kind of the result of the same inequities that some of the partners that we're trying to work with are, and that people are homeschooling. And in fact, like, the sort of impulse for extreme creativity is something to be really mindful of. For some community engagement classes, the opportunity may present itself to be amazing and to reformulate and do some amazing work. And some people may need to say, my colleague in the nursing school is always saying, like, sometimes good enough is good enough. And I just think for some people, this might be one of those moments where it's like, it's good enough, whatever you do. You know, the basic like thing of community engagement that, I mean, Rose and I have always talked about is like do no harm. And that may just be the best you can do, especially if you are, you know, if you have little kids or if you have college students who had gone away and are back home. There's just a moment to just say like, it's okay, good enough.
I'll also say some of the conversations I have been a part of with my colleagues at other institutions, and I think even IUPUI had a convo about this, is that the extreme creativity, making sure that that's meta, making sure that that's the students being meta about their experiences and not making the community subjects for creativity is possibly one of the ways to solve some of, you know, to get through this weird time period. And I found that really helpful as a sort of frame or a sort of heuristic for thinking about like there's a lot of ways to be sort of out of the box that does not burden a community partner. And I think that Kate, the fact that you talked about how looking at food insecurity and have replacements with nonprofits in the area who work on food insecurity and knowing that like they don't have bandwidth to try to figure out how to engage with students online is actually really, really, really important. And I think the Brian Williams kind of saying the kind of like using it as a starting off point for thinking about being in the midst of this global crisis and turning it inward for students or like talking about their own development. I just found that kind of a useful way that maybe wouldn't be ideally what we would all do, but can do something for now. So, yeah.
So may I just thank you so much, Rose. Jump in and say there are a couple of people who have their hands up virtually. So which is Frank Dukes and Kate Stevenson. So Frank, do you want to contribute?
Yeah, a lot of threads that are really resonating. I think the last couple of years in particular, I've been paying a lot of attention to trauma, and I'm not trained in that, but I've brought in counselors to classes. We're working in, basically every community has a lot of histories of trauma, but Charlottesville, obviously, August 2017, but also the racialized history of our community has enormous traumas too. And so both the teaching of how you engage communities with a trauma-informed approach, but also doing the sort of self-care for the students. And I think just the caution that so many of our students are going to be experiencing. Obviously, the sense of loss that people have already talked about. I'm sure some of them already have family members that are affected, you know, that are ill. And I'm looking for resources actually on self-care practices. One final quick comment that I have done a couple of trainings recently and been pretty online and been very deliberate at taking quite a bit of time for people to do self-care activities in the middle of it, not going very long, you know, shorter periods of time, breathing exercises and so forth. So if people have resources along those lines, I'd love to see some sort of sharing of that. Thanks.
I know, Ellen, did you have some resources that you were going to share? One of the things that we're going to do as a follow-up to this meeting is start to add more resources to the teaching continuity page. And I don't know if Ellen has any that specifically address what Frank mentioned or related issues.
On trauma-informed approach, no, not specifically. I do have sort of a stockpile that I'll share with perhaps the CTE so you can get it up on the website.
Well, and Bethany Teachman is doing some mental health things that might be useful in terms of, I mean, thinking about trauma-informed approaches in general and how those can be translated to pedagogy.
Let me ask everyone, because we're
Kate,
nearing the,
yeah.
Go on, Dorothy.
Just I want to give Kate a chance since she had her hand up.
I'm not, oh, I see.
Oh, thank you. It was a little while ago, so I feel like maybe my moment's passed. That's fine. Just wanted to echo what Rose and Bonnie were saying, at least in my classes. Just the community partners we work with are so overstressed. So just that idea of doing no harm and trying to think about, like what you were saying, Andy, how can I, as a writing professor, use the discipline to react to what's going on. So I'm having my students look at the vulnerable populations we are working with in their communities and seeing what the response from their community is towards people experiencing homelessness, food insecurity, whatever the population was. And rather than going into the community, looking at this as a moment to kind of think on a meta level, like Rose was saying, but also as a way to document so that, you know, maybe towards the end of this, we have people writing, thinking about what happened, what was the response. So, you know, maybe that's helpful too, to think about, you know, how can we still be sort of engaged, but not stressing the places that are already at their limit.
And not stressing ourselves. I really appreciated that point from Bonnie, because I'm one of those people who can definitely go over the edge of creativity. And this is, I actually do have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old screaming outside my door. So I can very much relate to that, that need to stay centered and accept good enough. And so part of creativity might simply being just creatively reimagining what you're expecting of yourself and of your students. I want to ask everyone, what additional kinds of support would you find helpful? I guess one related question is, would you find semi-regular meetings like this among this group of faculty, dealing specifically with community engaged courses? Would that be helpful to you? And if so, are there any specific topics that you'd like to focus on? And maybe you can just type that in the chat box so we have a running record of that. You know, would these meetings continuing on a weekly or semi-weekly basis be useful? And if so, what specific topics related to community engaged teaching or resources would you find most useful? Yes, as Ellen mentioned, Compact Minnesota does weekly meetings on Friday. Ellen's provided a link. But I'm wondering if it would also be useful if our group, our group of faculty, I think it's stayed connected and
if anyone has questions for me, feel free to email later. The chat feature is actually not accessible for the visually impaired, so I can't see it. So if anyone has things that I could be useful with, feel free to email me after this is done.
I think that hearing regularly what people are doing and just sort of how the semester is actually unfolding with all the approaches folks are taking, I personally would find really useful. I don't know if that's an every other week thing. I saw that come in a couple of chats, but every other week might make sense. But yeah. Sorry.
He agrees. So maybe every couple of weeks we just do an informal check-in like this, where we talk about what we're dealing with, what we've had success with, what's coming up. Does that sound like something people would be interested in? If yes, just click on the yes button, so I get a sense of how much interest there is in that. Okay. All right, so I think we'll try to do that. And also someone mentioned a Google Doc. It's assembling our ideas. We can put that together as well. This was actually very helpful to me. Just frankly, just being connected to you all. We should be more connected even outside of crisis moments. But maybe this will be our wake-up call. But this is great, and I want to thank you. And I think we will do every couple of weeks. Maybe we'll do a check-in, an informal check-in where we can come together. Maybe other people will join the conversation. And let's keep supporting one another. And like Bonnie said, if anyone has any specific questions for Bonnie or Ellen or Rose or me, feel free to reach out directly as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week. We'll talk soon.